Hi, I'm Professor Keyes with the University of Baltimore School of Law, and I'll be discussing particular social groups, which is a concept that is a little bit trickier than some of the other protected grounds in asylum law. So, in particular social groups, there are four different elements. First, the group must be innate, and that means that the group has to be centered on a characteristic that is immutable, that either cannot be changed or that an individual should not be asked to change because it is so fundamental. Some examples would be things like gender or sexuality or past experiences or whose family you're a part of. These are things you either cannot change or should not be forced to change. Next is social distinction. This is the most recent addition to the crew. It used to be called something else. This element is about how people may be regarded as separate or distinct within their community or society. And it's important to realize that's not necessarily the country at large, but it could be in their particular community, whether that's a city, a neighborhood, a rural area. The scale does not matter so much as that they're somehow seen as a group, as socially distinct in that community. So examples would be things like a family grouping, who are known to be a family in their community, students, journalists. Third, we have particularity. This is contested often, and the government sometimes requires that a PSG be big. That's what they're looking for. But at its core, it's not about size. It's about knowing who is in and who is out of the group. Is there some fairly clear line between who is a member and who is not? And then the fourth requirement is that the group not be defined by the harm. This is also known as the circularity requirement. And this is really best explained by example. Your group just can't be defined as people who fear persecution. Even if you take that more specifically, people who fear gang threats, people who fear sexual assault, those groups are defined around the feared harm, and the courts have said over and over that that is not going to work. Crucially, once you have a good, solid, particular social group, you need to check to make sure, does the group actually reflect the reason somebody fears a harm? So this is the nexus requirement. But the particular social group you've defined must be at least one central reason for the harm that is feared. These are related concepts, but distinct. We have to consider them, keep looking to make sure that in being good about defining our group and meeting these elements, we're not straying from the reason for the harm. So I like to think of all this as the PSG boxing ring. And the boxing ring is helpful for me because the ring has 4 posts, and those posts are pretty solid. Those posts you can think of as the 4 elements of a good particular social group. There's also the center of the ring where the action is. And in this metaphor, the center is the reason for the persecution. When we're defining a particular social group, we need to define it in a way that it helps explain why this person is afraid, why this harm would be done to the person. But we also have the ropes. And as you know, in boxing, the ropes have some give to them. The posts are solid and steady and there. But when you push against the ropes, the space expands in the ring a little bit, right? So your PSGs are constantly shifting as lawyers push a little against this element and work a little with that element. Essentially, they're pushing against the ropes to create a little bit more space to accommodate the heart of this person's claim. So to put that into slightly more concrete terms, and then we'll apply it in a moment. First, you want to check your elements, make sure the posts are sort of steady and fixed in there. And you run your proposed particular social group through those 4 elements. Is it innate? Is it socially distinct? Is it particular? And have I avoided defining the group by the harm? Then I feel good about my particular social group. Does that actually answer the question of why the person would be harmed? Is this what's motivating, or a central reason for what's motivating the persecutor? If yes, you're all set. If no, go back and try another, run it through those 4 elements, make sure you're still capturing why this harm would be happening, and so forth. To put a particular PSG to the test, we have to remember we need to actually prove these things. So imagine, fairly typical Central American example, your client received threats because her brother refused to join the MS-13. So you're thinking perhaps your particular social group is that she's a member of the immediate family of her brother with his name. You would put his name in the particular social group. Is it innate? You can probably prove that with birth certificates that she is, you know, a member of this family, so that's good. You have avoided defining it by the harm. The harm is not contained in the formulation, so that part is good. Is it particular? Well, yeah, you can establish who is in the family and who is not through testimony, maybe through producing other birth certificates, so that's no problem. What could be tricky is whether or not it's socially distinct. This is where recent case law has created some confusion, because there was a lot of dicta from the Attorney General about whether families are socially distinct and shouldn't they be very visible nationally. And the fact is that the actual holdings of relevant case law still, as of August 2020, permit that distinction to happen on any number of levels, but of course we do have to prove it. So the question there is, how do people know this is a family? Maybe they attended church together on Sundays. Maybe they were always in a group at the beach or having barbecues or something. It doesn't have to be anything sort of newsworthy, as long as people in their society or community understood that they were in fact a distinct unit. And if you can answer those questions positively, then yes, you're all set on social distinction. The final point is to remember this only applies, this analysis with its 4 parts and then testing and all of that really only applies to particular social groups. You do not need to go through this for the other protected grounds. You do not, for example, need to show that a political opinion is particular, whatever that might be. You do not need to show that religion is innate, even though it could well qualify. You don't have to go through that. It's only in the particular social group analysis that these things matter. So with that, I hope you found the video helpful, and thank you for listening.